What if the single most influential book in human history, the very text that has shaped empires, laws, and the beliefs of billions, is not what it seems? For millennia, the Bible has been presented as the unified, sacred word of God, dictated to prophets and apostles, but what if that's not the whole story? What if, hidden beneath the surface of its holy verses, lies evidence of a secret literary war fought by rival authors with competing agendas, all vying for control of the narrative? For centuries, this was just a radical theory whispered among scholars. But now, an advanced artificial intelligence has entered this ancient debate, and its findings are threatening to expose a truth more shocking than anyone ever imagined. It all starts with a simple problem, one that has puzzled curious readers for centuries. The Bible is full of glitches. Strange repetitions and jarring contradictions that just don't make sense if a single author was behind it all. Take the very beginning, in the book of Genesis. There aren't one, but two completely different stories of creation. In the first chapter, God, called Elohim, creates the world in a grand, orderly 6-day sequence, making man and woman simultaneously as the final act. But flip the page to chapter 2 and the story resets. Now, God is called Elohim. He creates man first from dust, then plants the Garden of Eden, then creates animals to be his helpers, and finally crafts woman from the man's rib. The timeline, the name of God, and the sequence of events are completely different. And it doesn't stop there. How many of each animal did Noah take on the ark? Genesis 6 says to of every kind. But just a chapter later, Genesis 7 says he took 7 pairs of the clean animals and only 1 pair of the unclean. Throughout the first 5 books, the name for Moses' father-in-law changes, key laws are repeated with different wording, and stories appear to be stitched together from separate accounts. For centuries, these were dismissed as mysteries of faith. But a few daring scholars began to suspect something else was at play. They believed they weren't reading the work of one author, but the heavily edited work of many. This suspicion gave birth to one of the most explosive ideas in biblical scholarship, the documentary hypothesis. It proposed that the first 5 books of the Bible, the Torah, were not written by Moses, but were instead a masterful patchwork woven together from at least 4 distinct and ancient sources. Scholars gave these mysterious authors code names J, E, D, and P. The J source, known as the Yahwist, was believed to be a brilliant storyteller from the southern kingdom of Judah. This writer used the personal name Yahweh for God and wasn't afraid to portray God with raw, human-like emotions, walking in the garden, feeling regret, and getting angry. The J source is likely responsible for the vivid, earthy stories like the Garden of Eden and the Tower of Babel. Then there was the E source, or the Elohist, from the rival northern kingdom of Israel. This author was more formal, referring to God as Elohim until he formally reveals his name to Moses. The writer preferred to show God communicating through dreams and angelic messengers, keeping a respectful distance. It is believed the J and E sources were eventually combined into a single text, creating some of the very repetitions and contradictions that first tipped scholars off. But the plot thickens, to other powerful voices were yet to enter the fray. First came the D source, the Deuteronomist. This author or school of writers was driven by a fiery passion for reform. They are credited with writing the book of Deuteronomy, which was famously discovered in the temple during the reign of King Josiah. This book laid out a stark covenant: if Israel worships one God in one place, Jerusalem, and obeys his laws, they will be blessed. If they stray, they will face famine, invasion, and exile. The D source's message was so powerful that it reshaped Israelite religion. Finally, there was the P source, the priestly writer. This author was a meticulous, detail-oriented organizer, likely writing during or after the Babylonian exile, a time when the Jewish people had lost their land and their temple. For P, the way to preserve their identity was through strict adherence to ritual, law, and purity. The P source is obsessed with genealogies, dietary laws, and precise instructions for building the tabernacle. This writer portrays God as a transcendent, all-powerful, and distant being, a far cry from the J writer's God who walked on the earth. According to the theory, it was this priestly school that had the final word. This is where the story takes a turn toward a kind of ancient conspiracy. It's been said that the priestly school, in a bid to create a unified foundational text for a scattered people, took on the monumental task of editing everything together. They allegedly gathered the ancient J&E stories, combined them with the powerful legal code of the D source, and then wrapped it all in their own framework of laws, rituals, and genealogies. In doing so, they became the master editors of the Torah. They didn't just preserve the past, they shaped it. By placing their version of the creation story at the very beginning and their extensive legal codes throughout the text, the P-source effectively ensured their worldview, one centered on order, holiness, and the authority of the priesthood, would become the definitive version for all future generations. The result was a text of incredible complexity, with different voices and theologies often clashing on the very same page. But that wasn't the end of the story. Another group of writers had their own grand project. While the priestly school was focused on the law, the Deuteronomist school was busy writing history, but it was history with a clear and powerful agenda. It is believed that the same school of thought that produced the book of Deuteronomy also wrote or heavily edited the books that followed, from Joshua and Judges all the way through I and 2 Kings. This sprawling epic is now known as the Deuteronomistic history. Its purpose wasn't just to record events, it was to prove a point, over and over again. Every king, every battle, and every national triumph or tragedy was interpreted through a single, rigid lens. Loyalty to the covenant brings divine favor and victory, while disobedience and idolatry inevitably lead to ruin. This narrative explained why the northern kingdom of Israel fell to the Assyrians and why the southern kingdom of Judah was eventually exiled to Babylon. It was a brutal, direct message to the survivors. Our downfall was our own fault. This masterful piece of theological propaganda shaped how Jews and later Christians understood their own history for thousands of years. For centuries, this entire web of J, E, D, and P was just a theory, a compelling one, but impossible to prove. It was one group of scholars' word against another's, until now. What if a new kind of mind, one that isn't human, could finally settle the score? In a groundbreaking study, researchers from the University of Haifa, Duke University, and the Collège de France decided to unleash a powerful AI on this ancient problem. They developed a sophisticated algorithm designed to do what human scholars could only do through intuition and painstaking analysis: distinguish the unique stylistic fingerprints of different authors. The AI wasn't looking at grammar or story themes, which can be easily imitated. Instead, it analyzed the subconscious patterns of writing, things like the distribution of common words, the preference for certain synonyms, and the unique combinations of simple function words like and, but, which, or to. The theory was that every author or school of authors has a unique and unconscious stylistic signature. The team trained the AI on biblical texts that scholars had long attributed to the main writing schools, the Deuteronomist and the priestly sources. Then they set it loose on the rest of the text to see what it would find. And the results sent a shockwave through the world of biblical studies. The AI didn't just perform well, it performed with terrifying accuracy. In 84% of the cases, the AI's automatic attribution of a text matched the consensus of human biblical scholars, providing the first major statistical evidence that these distinct writing schools were real. But it was the AI's analysis of disputed texts that was truly revealing. For years, scholars have debated the origins of the arc narrative in the books of Samuel. The AI confidently sided with the minority view, showing that I Samuel and Samuel have different stylistic signatures. It claimed I Samuel was written by an unknown author, while to Samuel was a clear match for the Deuteronomist school. The AI's verdict was that these were two separate stories stitched together. The revelations kept coming. The algorithm also flagged other parts of the Hebrew Bible as having distinct identities separate from the main schools. Famous stories about Abraham and the entire book of Esther, it turns out, don't stylistically fit with the J, E, D, or P sources. The AIS conclusion, rumors suggest these were likely independent stories added to the Bible at a much later date by yet another group of unknown editors. The machine had confirmed in moments what scholars had argued over for generations, so where does this leave us? If an AI can scientifically demonstrate that the Bible wasn't written by a single divine hand, but was assembled by different human authors with competing viewpoints, does that shatter its religious authority? For some, the answer is a definitive yes. The idea that parts of the holy text were a product of political agendas or priestly power struggles can be deeply unsettling. It challenges the very notion of the Bible as the flawless, inerrant Word of God, but for many modern theologians and believers, this discovery doesn't destroy faith. It deepens it. They argue that this complex, messy, and intensely human process is actually a more profound story of divine inspiration. In this view, God didn't just dictate a book. He worked through a dynamic, centuries-long conversation within a community. He inspired storytellers, reformers, priests, and historians, allowing their diverse human voices to form a complex and layered testament of humanity's struggle to understand the divine. The Bible ceases to be a flat, monolithic rule book and becomes a vibrant, living library of voices. In the end, the mystery of who wrote the Bible may be the wrong question. The real, more fascinating story is how it came to be. It's a story of rival kingdoms, political turmoil, national trauma, and the incredible human effort to make sense of it all. The text we have today is not a monologue from heaven, but a chorus of voices echoing across centuries, a storyteller's epic, a reformer's passionate plea, and a priest's meticulous blueprint for survival, all woven into a single, sacred tapestry. The arrival of AI hasn't given us all the answers. Instead, it has given us a powerful new tool to appreciate the Bible's staggering depth and complexity. It forces us to confront a final, thought-provoking question: does knowing the Bible is a collection of diverse, often conflicting human perspectives make it less sacred? Or does it reveal a far more authentic and relatable story of our unending search for truth?